Welcome everyone. We're just waiting for a few people to join and we'll commence the webinar shortly. The numbers joining us online are growing fast, so I'll be back in a minute or so to start the webinar. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Michelle King, Head of Strategic Partnerships and Business Development at VTIC, Victorian Tourism Industry Council. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of all the lands from where you are joining this session today. We are coming to you today from the lands of Wurundjeri peoples and the Kulin Nation. We pay respects to their elders, past and present, and acknowledge their continued custodianship and deep spiritual connection to the land and waters. We honour the strength and richness of over 60,000 years of continuous Aboriginal culture and recognise the vital role of future generations as stewards of culture and country. Welcome everyone, and before we start the webinar, just some housekeeping. Your microphone has been muted and your camera is off. This session is being recorded and you'll receive a link to access the recording. Will be distributed to all attendees in the next few days, probably early next week. It will also be available to members on our website under the past event tab. At the end of the presentation, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. Please put your questions in the Q&A field as the chat field is closed for this session. It is my pleasure to welcome our partner and friends at Melbourne Airport, Michael Cullen, Head of Commercial and Airline Business Development, and Andrew Lund, Head of Media and Communications. Today, Michael and Andrew will walk us through the latest intel on Melbourne Airport's 6 months performance and share what's ahead of Victoria aviation landscape. We're really pleased to have them with us to present this valuable update and outlook. Welcome, Michael and Andrew.
Okay, hopefully you can all see me, and I'll just put this into large format mode. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Michelle, for the introduction. As Michelle mentioned, I'm Michael Cullen, and I lead the airline business development team here at Melbourne Airport, joined by my colleague, Andrew Lund. So we're tag teaming today. Firstly, what I'm going to share is an update on all things aviation in relation to passenger markets, and as Michelle mentioned, I guess what we're seeing at the moment in terms of current trends and the impact from the Iran conflict. I thought what I could do to start off with, though, is just share a little bit around the team and what the airline business development team does here at Melbourne Airport. Primarily, our focus is on expanding international passenger services to Melbourne Airport, growing our market share and strengthening our presence in what we consider high-paying markets. So a lot of the discussion today and focus for today is largely upon an international landscape. Our team essentially works directly with airlines, usually with their network planning teams, to promote the opportunity to fly to Melbourne, or in the case of existing carriers, to fly more often to Melbourne or to new destinations. That really includes attracting new airlines, supporting existing carriers to increase frequency, and building the case for new services to Melbourne. What's really important to note up front is the work is very long. So it takes years of engagement and development, often requires us to make sure we're balancing each airline's broader commercial interests, strategies, their fleet capabilities, and the ability to build a strong commercial case to make Melbourne make sense within their network. For example, we recently welcomed Delta Airlines to Melbourne that was a solid 4 years of working pretty closely with the airline on that opportunity. So it is it's a very competitive environment and takes a long time. Often when we're competing for opportunities to fly to Australia, we're not only competing for the opportunity against other markets like Sydney or Brisbane, but also against global competitors where airlines have limited fleet. They need to make a decision in terms of where that aircraft is deployed to. And then once the services are secured, it's also our job to partner with the airlines, tourism organisations, and obviously the broader industry to make sure those services are successful and we can lead to the development and expansion of those services. So at the start, as I mentioned, our team has a really strong laser focus on developing international passenger services around a high priority market approach. What I've summarised on this slide is some of those high priority markets which we are actively in discussions or developing with global airline partners. Melbourne Airport currently has 42 airline partners serving the airport. At any one time, we're usually in discussions with between 20 or 25 new airlines, in addition to working with our existing airlines. So there's certainly a large pool of discussions occurring at any one time. In no particular order here, I just thought I'd go through some of the interesting trends we've seen, and some of this is contrasting to the markets and the changes that we have seen and noticed since COVID. Some are more recent changes. So starting up, excuse me, with North Asia, China, Japan, and Korea remain really top priority markets for us in terms of where we are seeking to grow services. Japan and Korea, as noted on the slide, we've seen really considerable growth since COVID of between 40 and 70%, yet we lack services relative to other Australian markets. In Korea, for example, we share less than 10% of the Korean visitor market into Melbourne. So we know that shouldn't make sense. So we're actively working to try and support year-round services from the Korea market. Japan, we're also significantly underserved. So again, a very strong focus in that market too. China, what we've seen coming out of COVID has been quite interesting. Our forecast seat capacity for the Q4 of this current calendar year and certainly into Q1 2027 is seeing a seat capacity growth of around about 25% compared to 2019 levels, which is really significant, particularly given the delayed reopening of the Chinese borders after COVID relative to other markets. One thing I did want to touch on, and it's down the bottom here, is it says open skies markets. What does that mean? All countries around the world operate under bilateral air services agreement. They are the agreements that countries make between each other, which determines the amount of capacity or the number of flights that each airline can operate into each other's country. Australia and China operate under what's called an open skies agreement, which basically means there's unlimited capacity for services between our two countries. That's why we've been really successful in re-attracting Chinese airlines to Melbourne after COVID, because they haven't had the restrictions that some other markets place on their operations like North America and Europe. Since 2019, we've also now flying to Shanghai and Shenzhen Airlines, the only airline flying into Australia from Shenzhen. We've clearly seen a change in the market composition, and the independent traveller has certainly overtaken group travel. And certainly from our lens, the overall market has been slightly reshaped. We've seen more Australians or Australian passport holders travelling to China as well, which has been enabled through China's 30-day visa-free policy. So overall, it's been a very interesting market to see change, particularly relative to 2019 levels. In the left-hand corner down there, South Asia, also a really important market for Melbourne. We are now the largest India market in Australia. Just to give you an example, the Delhi to Melbourne market size is over 50% larger than the Sydney-Delhi market, which has been really great to see the response from airlines. We've seen Air India grow frequency between Melbourne and Delhi. They're now operating daily services and will soon be deploying, or I think they actually have started deploying a 777, which is a larger aircraft. After COVID, it was pleasing to also have Qantas enter the Delhi market out of Melbourne. And next month, we'll see Jetstar launch services to Colombo, and we'll also see Sri Lankan Airlines increase services into Sri Lanka as well. So a really interesting market. What I did want to make a point though on, and given I've just talked about China, is the difference in those two markets. China has around about 12 international long-haul operators that can easily add capacity to and from Australia, whereas in India, we're more reliant upon the capacity from Air India and kind of emerging capacity from Indigo. So really the opportunities for non-stop services are more limited than China. I'm quite often asked the question, why don't we have more direct services? And it largely comes down to the competitive dynamics. It is a market, however, that is highly dependent upon connecting hubs. So markets like Malaysia, Thailand, and Singapore provide really important connection flows. So the carriers like Malaysian Airlines, Singapore Airlines, and Thai Airways are very important to that market. The Americas has also been an interesting market for us. We remain unserved to Canada. We had Air Canada services operating into Melbourne pre-COVID, and we haven't seen those services return. The market still hasn't recovered from a capacity perspective, but we were pleased to welcome Delta Airlines to Melbourne in December last year. Pleasingly, they will be growing to daily services from December right through until March. And South America has also experienced some growth. For the first time in our history, we've had daily non-stop services into South America, and those services will be returning in November. But what's been really interesting in the American market is demand between the United States and Japan and United States and Europe has grown about 70% relative to pre-COVID levels, but we haven't seen that response in the Australian market. So I think there's certainly a role that we need to think about. How do we better position Australia in the US market, and particularly what role does that have in terms of how we promote Melbourne? The other markets I haven't listed on here, but are also very important, and I just wanted to note, is the emerging markets. So Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand. We certainly have seen visitor growth from those markets, and particularly in markets like Vietnam, that's being fueled by new carriers. So expect to see some growth in this space. Turning now to just an update on our current market performance. This is our financial year 26 passenger numbers. So in total, we welcomed 37 million passengers last financial year. That includes close to 25 million domestic passengers. And last week, we announced a record 12.2 million international passengers through Melbourne Airport. That's the highest level of international passenger traffic in our history. So a really significant milestone for us. Really, since COVID and the closure of the borders, we've had a really clear plan about recovery and working with airlines on resilient measures during COVID to build a foundation for growth for Melbourne in international markets. Pleasingly, we were the first major airport in Australia to fully recover our international seat capacity to 2019 levels, which we achieved back in December 2023. And over the last 12 months, we've had many significant milestones and welcome new airlines. And I have a very short video I'm just going to show you which overviews some of those significant achievements. So as the video notes, we were thrilled to welcome Delta Airlines, Hong Kong Airlines, and Shenzhen Airlines in the last financial year, and their initial operations were included in that 12.2 million passenger milestone. Looking ahead, a number of services shortly, which were in the video, which we're really excited about. Finnair will commence daily flights to Helsinki via Bangkok from the end of October. They will be their only Australian service, and only true European carrier, if we're considering the European Union in its true sense. British Airways have announced they'll commence daily flights to London via Kuala Lumpur from the 10th of January, just in time for our busy event season, which is really exciting. So after a 21-year absence from Melbourne, they'll be returning those services. Qantas will also be returning their previously quite popular Qantas 910 service, which is the service from Melbourne to London via Perth. And they've also announced they'll be expanding their Tokyo services over the peak summer period. So between December and March, they'll be operating an additional 4 flights per night, which will be overnight evening services from Melbourne. As I mentioned, LATAM will be operating daily flights to Santiago over the busy it's actually November to March period. So again, we will have daily non-stop services into the South American market, which is very important. And I previously mentioned that after just commencing in December, last year, Delta Airlines will increase to be a daily service from December. So by January, when British Airways touch down at Melbourne, we should have a record 44 international airlines serving Melbourne Airport. Now, clearly, aviation is not operating in its normal environment right now. And since early March, the Iran conflict has led to, in particular, Middle Eastern carriers to adjust capacity and operations across their global networks. And that, of course, includes their services to Melbourne. In the last quarter of financial year 26, we did have an impact from reduced frequency. And it should be noted that the situation remains quite dynamic. For now, the Australian government has removed its transit warning and has downgraded the countries to level 3, which is still all but essential travel. But pleasingly, we have seen a return of capacity. So all of the Middle Eastern airlines are operating services to Melbourne. And in July, we're back to around about 72% of the forecast capacity we'd anticipated had it not been for the Iranian conflict. Looking ahead, what we anticipate is come December, we will potentially be back to our anticipated frequency. So Qatar Airways has, in conjunction with Virgin Australia, will be back to triple daily services. Etihad will be operating a daily frequency, and Emirates 3 times daily. We just found that capacity is particularly for bringing European visitors into Australia. So whilst it is a dynamic situation, we are confident that we will see a demand recovery. I was actually just in Doha on the weekend, and the team there are reporting that they are seeing strong demand for the northern winter season, which is the season that starts from November. So that's a very positive sign. Outside of that, however, and when the conflict first commenced, there was obviously alternative ways for that market to get to and from Melbourne. And pleasingly, we saw Singapore Airlines respond by upgauging one of their daily services to an A380. They've also announced that they'll be investing in a new business class lounge at Melbourne Airport. So by December, we hope to be opening that facility as well. As mentioned, both Finnair and British Airways have launched daily services, or will be launching daily services to Melbourne. So there'll be additional options for travelling to and from Europe from Asia. Both have exceptional business class products, which I know resonates with the target markets we're targeting to come to Victoria. And then right across China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia and Thailand, there remain a significant number of opportunities. So what I would say is, as you look ahead over the next 12 months in particular, I think we are likely to see that recovery in the Middle East capacity, noting that it remains a dynamic situation. We will see an increased focus on European traffic, and I think Finnair and British Airways will provide more opportunities for the European market to come to Melbourne, and it particularly will open up new corridors, including the Nordics, will become more accessible. I think as you plan for the North Asian market, what we will see is continued growth out of China. The demand will continue to be quite significant. In fact, we're anticipating the coming Chinese New Year will probably be our largest from a capacity standpoint. We'll have up to 13 daily services from across mainland China services, in addition to 4 daily flights from Hong Kong. So it's a really significant milestone. There will be concentration through key hubs. So Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou will predominantly be where we see the growth. And we'll also continue to see that growth in the Americas, not to the levels we would like to see, but still seeing that recovery. Before I finish, I just really quickly wanted to touch on some other interesting trends in the industry, which you may have heard about or get reported in the news quite a lot. First, on the left-hand side is an aircraft called an A321XLR. That's an Airbus 321, and it's an extra long-range version of that aircraft. For Australia, that's important because both Qantas and Jetstar have a very significant order of these planes. They've already started to receive some of these aircraft, and they are flying those domestically, replacing some of their 737s that fly, for example, between Melbourne and Sydney. But what we'll see in the coming years is that these aircraft will be used to serve international markets. So that's likely going to see some change to frequency on existing markets. So you'll be able to increase the frequency. You will also potentially see new Asian or island markets growth. But there'll also be an introduction of a single aisle business class product, which is a little bit unique, a bit different. Just in the middle there is the A350-1000s. There's been a bit of talk about these. This is the type of aircraft that Qantas has ordered for Project Sunrise. They have a specific type of A350-1000, which is called an ultra long range aircraft. They're quite niche and quite specific to Qantas. But outside of that, carriers like Turkish Airlines and Air Canada have announced they're ordering these aircraft as well. So that's really important because that'll all of a sudden open up new non-stop options for Melbourne. So Turkish Airlines, for example, instead of having to have a stop via Singapore, will most likely operate between Melbourne and Istanbul on a non-stop basis. And then that opens up a whole range of European connections. Similarly, Air Canada will have the capability, hopefully, to come back to Melbourne with that aircraft type. And then finally, there's been a lot of talk of Boeing 777. Most recently, the CEO of Emirates said that they could probably use baked bean cans, and I don't know that that's necessarily a recommendation I would make, but certainly I just wanted to make a note of it because it has been an aircraft that has taken a long time to be certified, but there's a number of large airlines that are relying upon this aircraft to be delivered to enable their growth. So here in Melbourne and across Australia, the likes of Qatar Airways, Cathay, Singapore Airlines, about delayed. So we're very much looking forward to those aircraft being delivered, and then that hopefully will enable some future growth in those markets. That's all I have for you today. I know there will be some questions at the end of today's session, and I'm very happy to answer extra questions if they come up after this session. I think we've also spoken about this being a regular cadence and occurrence where we can provide some market updates every 6 months. So we're very happy to do that. But I'll now hand over to my colleague, Andrew Lund, to take us through the second half of today's presentation.
Thanks, Michael. So Michael's obviously touched on the airline dynamics, and I'm just going to talk through a little bit about, I guess, the infrastructure that's associated with serving all of that growth. The last 12 months were a record for us for international passengers. We cracked 12 million international passengers for the first time ever. Overall, we were just under 37 million. So that wasn't quite a record because domestic hasn't quite got back to where it was pre-COVID. But certainly the international story is a really positive one for Melbourne, and a credit to Michael and his team and the work they've done to bring airline capacity back into Melbourne. But obviously that brings with it some challenges for our infrastructure, and you can see the attached image there. Everything that's highlighted is new infrastructure that we need to build. So there's some significant work happening with the international terminal, and I'll touch on that a bit later. But you can see there as well, the domestic piers are earmarked for expansion. And there's some significant work as well with the ground transport network that I'll go into a little bit further. And you can see there as well, airport rail is a part of that. It does feature in our plans. It's obviously been something that's been talked about for a long time. We are still talking with the state and federal governments. We're having some really constructive discussions with them about what delivery looks like. The timing of delivery is a matter for the state and federal governments, though. So we're kind of a little bit in their hands, but things are progressing. And obviously they've started stage 1 works down at Sunshine to untangle some of the junctions there that enable the rail line to push out to the airport. So that's something we're working towards. We recognise that with an increase in passenger numbers and an increase in staff at the airport, we do need to make sure that we've got really effective transport links and a choice for people as well. The other thing I should call out that you can see on this render, just off in the left-hand corner, is our third runway. That was approved by the federal government back in September 2024, and works are underway to get that in the ground. We've got preliminary works happening at the moment. Major construction work should start happening in the next 6 months or so. So that's a very big project. You can see my assistant there, thanks to the school strike. But that's a big build. We're anticipating having that runway open in 2031. When it does open, that'll introduce some really exciting new operating capability for us. It'll allow parallel runway operations for the first time in Melbourne, which is similar to what Brisbane and Sydney already have. It'll improve the resilience of our airport. It'll mean that aircraft can take off and land on those two runways simultaneously, rather than the current cross-runway operation that we have at the moment. That'll just mean that on foggy mornings, we can still get aircraft through when we need to, and hopefully we'll have less diversions to other cities. But the big piece of work we have underway at the moment, that if you've been through the airport in the last 2 years, you've probably experienced firsthand, is the Narm Way project, and that is construction of the new pick-up and drop-off zones for terminals 1, 2, and 3. And I'll just run you through a little video now. Hopefully it plays. It'll show you what's happening. Effectively, we will be separating private vehicles from commercial vehicles. And you may have seen coverage in the last couple of months. The days of curbside drop-off are numbered. When this opens in October, that departures ramp that we've been using since the airport opened in 1970 will close to traffic. And instead, we will introduce new drop-off zones on level 3 of the T123 car park, and a new pickup zone on level 2 of the T123 car park, which provides a heap more capacity for drop-off bays and pickup bays, and also allows us to start expanding the international terminal. So you can see here on the video a bit of a look at what the new drop-off zones look like. Much more space. People will, there's a new gateway that people will sort of proceed to the terminals through. So the video will get us there eventually. You can see the gateway entrance here. So sort of a new front door, if you like, to the airport, that people will head down through. And once they're down the bottom here, they'll make a choice as to whether they're heading to Terminal 1, Terminal 2, or Terminal 3. We've built a new 19-metre wide bridge connecting the structure through to the international terminal, so a new direct link there, which will be very useful. And ultimately, there'll be a bridge connecting this section through to the new airport rail station as well. It's incorporated into our long-term plan. So there's a bit of a look at what the new pedestrian bridge looks like. It is going to be a very big change for us. But as I said, what it does enable is the expansion of the international terminal. And you can see in the render here just what that looks like. You can see the check-in hall pushes out over what is currently the departures ramp, and arrivals pushes out into what is currently the forecourt. So 2 of the existing lanes we have in the forecourt will be eaten up by the terminal expansion. And that will give us a lot more room for baggage claim and arrivals. Christine, I might just need you to step away. That's all right. Thank you. So that's a really exciting project for us, because obviously arrivals is a really big pain point. So we're looking forward to getting that underway. There's a few other things in the international terminal expansion that I should probably call out. Out on the airfield, we'll be building another 5 wide-bodied gates. That's potentially 8 narrow-bodied gates. So that'll just give the airlines more flexibility to schedule flights to the places people want to go at the times they want to fly. It means Michael and his team won't be tearing their hair out when every airline wants to arrive at 6:15 in the morning. So that'll provide them with a bit more flexibility. There'll be an improved lounge precinct for the airlines, for their premium passengers, and also an enhanced retail offering as well. So we're really looking forward to that. That'll be delivered in a series of projects over about the next 5 years. As you can imagine, building this in a 24-hour live operating environment is quite complex. We can't shut the place down. We've got to build around it, and at the same time, we've got to accommodate a record number of passengers. So it is quite a challenging build, but it'll be worth it in the end. So all that to say that the airport is going to be a construction zone pretty much for the next 5 to 10 years. So we apologise in advance. We are making progress though. Excitingly for us, we've recently commissioned a new $500 million baggage system in the international terminal. That more than doubles the capacity of what we had before, and excitingly introduces the potential for anytime check-in. We have a new bag storage room now, and effectively looks like a bit of a small IKEA warehouse, if you like, and robots that can sort of store bags until they're needed, and then when the flight is ready to load, they can bring the bags to the flight on effectively a little conveyor system. So that's an exciting development because it'll just give passengers some flexibility as well. It'll mean ultimately if airlines choose, they'll be able to have their passengers check in, say, at 10 in the morning, even if the flight's not going till 10 at night. So that'll give them an extra day to enjoy Melbourne. So we're really excited by that. But obviously there's still a lot of work to do. Now, as the precinct grows, accessibility is a real issue for us. And we're seeing a bit of a change in traveller demographics as well. Obviously, a lot of older Australians and people with mobility issues who want to keep travelling, and we want to make sure that the airport isn't a barrier to that. So what we've done in the last year is introduce a service called Melbourne Airport Assist. We did a big trial before we introduced this, a big 14-week trial. It was done in conjunction with Travellers Aid, who are fantastic partners. And since then, we've rolled this service out permanently with Travellers Aid. What it does is introduce a fleet of buggies and power-assisted wheelchairs into the terminals. And they are available from 6 a.m. through until 10 p.m. At various mobility hubs, or people can pre-book if they'd like. But this service we offer proactively to customers as they come through, and it's at no extra cost to customers. And it really prioritises a human touch. The wheelchairs are designed to be walked with the operator walking alongside the passenger rather than behind them, so that they can interact and talk to them. We thought the human touch and dignity was really important here. And the take-up has been fantastic. Since the service was introduced in September, we've assisted more than 40,000 passengers. So that's a real positive for us. It's a service that obviously people are still learning about, but we anticipate it will only continue to get more popular. And as we roll out the new pickup and drop-off zones in October, that service will extend out to the new transport hub as well, just to ensure that those extra distances that people have to walk aren't a barrier to people with mobility challenges getting around the precinct. So we're really excited by that. It's something you can find details of very easily on our website. If you search Melbourne Airport Assist, you'll get all the details there. You can see what's needed to pre-book services. If you have customers who are coming to the airport and being dropped off somewhere who know they're going to need help getting to check-in, we can certainly help with that. And that's what this service does, is it bridges the gap between the mobility services that the airlines offer and sort of the gap that we had on our precinct. So it really is that, not quite the last mile, but from arrival on the airport precinct to check-in, and then from baggage claim, which is where airlines typically finish their mobility services, through until the point of departure, be that a taxi, public pickup, or Skybus. This service can help. So it's something we're really proud of. It really is a bit of a world leader, and it's being embraced by passengers at the moment. So as the precinct continues to grow, we certainly see it becoming more and more useful. We're conscious there's a few questions, so we wanted to leave plenty of time for people to to get their questions to us, so Michael and I can respond, and look forward to answering as much as we can.
Thank you, Michael and Andrew, and your the canny appearance from the entertaining assistants. I'm sure many people have enjoyed the presentation from both of you extremely, the three of you. So thank you. We just have a few questions, and thank you for everyone who's provided questions beforehand. And I think Andrew and Michael, you've actually addressed most of those questions. They were accessibility. We had from our tour operators. Michael addressed the inbound passenger numbers and profiles, so that was great. The rail link was addressed by Andrew, and the other questions is one from one of our concierge from one of the Melbourne five-star hotels, is the VHA parking, Andrew. Is there an update on that?
There's no update other than to say, I know we talked about it last year, and it's something I've raised with the ground transport team, so it is on their radar. Obviously, they're doing a lot of planning at the moment as to what our ground transport system looks like once we open the new pick-up and drop-off zones. So it is something they're aware of, but I think the focus at the moment is getting these new pick-up and drop-off zones open and operating. And once that's done, they can sort of start to turn their attention to other areas, but the pick up and drop off is the real priority for us. It's probably the biggest change. Well, it is the biggest change to the airport's ground transport network since we opened in 1970, and there's a lot of people affected. So we do need to get that operating smoothly before we can look elsewhere.
Thanks, Andrew. And it's really good. You've got the Melbourne Airport's got a great relationship with concierge and front of house teams in Melbourne, Greater Melbourne. So we'll ensure that they're updated and informed about all the future developments at Melbourne Airport over the next few years. So we're looking after our guests with all their to inform them about the progress. The other one is, what future job opportunities do you foresee, and what other industry business partners do you think will come on board? So jobs for the airport.
That's probably
I
one
could,
for me.
yeah, I can answer half, and I think then Lundy, you can answer the other half. So why don't you start?
You do your half and I'll fill in the gaps. How's that?
Okay, sure. Look, I mean, I think obviously as airlines continue to grow and we see expanded services, aviation growth isn't just, obviously there is the direct attributable jobs that come from industry growing and air services growing, and that's right across the spectrum of ground handlers who are checking the airlines in, through to the caterers, cleaners, retailers, fuel suppliers, into fuel suppliers. So the impact of a daily international service, we estimate, contributes around 2,000 jobs, and that's both direct and indirect jobs, just from the aviation-related side of things.
Yeah, and then sort of alongside that is the retail offering. I sort of mentioned an expanded retail offering in the international terminal, but likewise Terminal 1, the Qantas domestic terminal, the team's in the process of upgrading the retail offering there. So there's a lot of jobs in that space as well, and that's actually one of the reasons we are real advocates for airport rail. We're also advocating a lot for improved public bus services to the airport, PTV bus services, because we really need to connect our workforce to the airport. There's currently only 4 PTV bus services that serve Melbourne Airport, which is crazy when you think that we're the country's largest 24-hour gateway. Only one of those bus services operates after 7:30 p.m. So we really need those local transport links so we can connect the local communities to the growing number of jobs we're going to have on the airport precinct in things like retail, ground handling, ground transport, all those associated industries that make the airport tick. So certainly there's all of those jobs, and then construction. The runway build is a $3 billion project. The international terminal is a $4.5 billion project. There's every chance we are going to be the state's largest infrastructure project once the Northeast Link and suburban rail start winding down, we'll certainly be competing with them in any case for workers and sort of volume of work. We will definitely be up there. So there will be a lot of jobs on our precinct in that space in the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh, that's really exciting. We'll have to lots of opportunities in that tourism and airline aviation space for future careers. So that's great. Andrew, oh no, actually, Michael, this question's for you. How does the FY 2026 flight capacity compare to 2019?
So for international, we have grown quite significantly. I think the numbers are around about 15% from a seat capacity perspective. From a domestic standpoint, we are still slightly below the FY19 numbers. So domestic is still a couple of percent behind where we were in 2019, but international has certainly surged ahead, and that's where we anticipate to continue to see the growth is in the international landscape.
Oh, thank you. There's lots of thank you to Michael and Andrew about a great presentation. So that's always pleasing to hear. Michael, I'm just wondering if you have any insight or breakdown on passenger numbers travelling here for tourism versus business.
We do. We generally rely upon broadly to the Tourism Research Australia International Visitor Survey and Studies. We also receive our own data, which is primarily through Border Force passport reading. So we can provide a bit of an overlay in terms of those markets. If there's a specific question or any specific markets that the question, sorry, I can't see who the question was from, but by all means, please feel free to reach out to me directly and I can have our team share whatever insights or specific information about the markets you might be after. There's certainly been a change in terms of some of the international visitor composition. And as I mentioned, I was talking very high level about overall market size in my presentation, which obviously includes Australians and international visitors coming into the country. But there's certainly been a reordering of the top 10, both from an international visitor perspective. We've seen, the likes of India, for example, and Vietnam grow into that top 10, both from a visitor perspective and an overall visitor market size. So probably doesn't answer the question specifically, but if there's any more follow-up, I'm happy to take it on board. But broadly, we rely on the International Visitor Survey.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Michael. Just direct all those questions to us and we'll forward them over to Andrew or Michael, depending on who can answer the question there the most appropriately, but that's probably the best way to handle it. Now, this is a question from our VTIC CEO. To you, Andrew, is there a proposed ETA for airport rail, acknowledging lots of conversations are still being taken place?
It's the $13 billion question there, Lisa. It is one for government. They are the ones who hold the purse strings and are in charge of the timing on all of this. We would certainly like to see it delivered within the next 5 to 10 years. And I think that's what government is currently working towards, albeit it is their call as to when they decide to get things moving. But as I said, we are having conversations with them about, what station designs look like and constructability and all those sort of things. So it is moving in the right direction, albeit probably not as fast as I know a lot of Victorians would like. But yes, if we could have it in 5 to 10 years, that'd be great.
Thank you, Andrew. Another one, is there any plans for kids space, playgrounds at the airport?
It's a good question. We've obviously got some scope to make changes as part of the international terminal expansion, and apologies for the ongoing cameos here.
Andrew, we are getting so much feedback saying that, she's so popular, your camo, they're loving it.
I think I need a playground at my house. It's certainly something that I know some people in the business are talking about. There's other airports around the world that do those sort of things really, really well. So never say never, I think would be the answer to that.
Oh, very good. Any suggestions for job opportunities at Melbourne Airport for tourism students looking to join our fabulous industry?
I think the
Andrew or
first one that comes to
Michael, who wants to take
yeah,
on the
yeah,
students?
I'm happy to take that one on. Look, I think probably the most likely entry point is, as Andrew mentioned, around the retail opportunity that's emerging at the airport, but also the most in demand industry out here are the ground handlers. So those people responsible for organising check-in, and quite often that's a really important role, particularly to develop customer experience. Dealing with sometimes difficult passengers. Believe it or not, we do have some of those. So I would say they're probably the best two opportunities to consider for tourism students to really grow their understanding of how the international markets work and get some really great exposure.
Yeah,
Thanks, Michael.
I think any of the customer facing roles we have at the airport are a great experience, be that Skybus, retail, ground handling. There's a myriad of opportunities for people, so I'd take anything you can get.
Yeah, Andrew, is there actually a jobs board, or how do people find out about the opportunities?
Yeah, so we have a service called Melbourne Airport Jobs Link that, again, you can Google, that is kind of a jobs aggregator, if you like, for the precinct. Melbourne Airport as a company only employs about 500 people, but we have 23,000 people who work on the precinct, obviously across all of the airlines and service providers and what have you. So the Melbourne Airport Jobs Link is the best place to look to get
Yeah,
an
that's
idea of what's available out at the airport.
great. Thank you. Okay, another one. With the planned terminal expansion, are there plans to increase customer and border processing capacity, such as adding more smart gate kiosks and broader screening facilities? I recently arrived from Malaysia at around 6 a.m. at the same time as the Emirates flight, and it took around 30 minutes just to reach a smart gate kiosk due to the queues. As Melbourne Airport continues to grow, how are you working with the Australian Border Force to ensure customers and immigration processing keep pace with increasing passenger volumes? Who wants to take that,
Um,
Michael or
I'm,
Andrew?
I'm happy to take that. Look, I mean, I think we recognise and know that part of the pain point at the airport is the arrivals experience. That's why we have a plan to expand our international arrivals infrastructure. We also, obviously, it's not just a Melbourne Airport matter. It is a matter that we work in conjunction with Border Force on. And for some time, we've been advocating to government to grow the number of kiosks in the arrival space. I think watch this space that we will see an expansion of those services. We also know that digital technology and adoption of the digital passenger incoming card is also a significant pain point for a lot of travellers, having to fill in that piece of paper when you're quite tired. And trying to arrive into Australia is not great. I just arrived from Tokyo this morning and was able to use the digital arriving passenger process, and it was very seamless and very straightforward. So in short, yes, we recognise it's a challenge. We're working closely with government to add more kiosks, but also more broadly, we need more space to accommodate that process and then the arriving experience around baggage carousels. And I think that render Andrew showed really demonstrated how we're building the infrastructure out to accommodate that. So we acknowledge it. We're working on a solution, and hopefully in the next couple of years, the process will be even more seamless than what it is today.
Thanks, Michael. And Andrew and Michael, are there any plans or early thoughts on future information services within the expanded airport and gateway works happening? Thinking of any new opportunities for regional destinational promotion and activation?
We have, in the last 18 months or so, upgraded the visitor information service in international arrivals. So that's sort of increased staffing and just making sure that there's people on hand there to answer customer queries. So that's probably the most visible thing that we've done. Our volunteers play a really important role as well, in terms of not only guiding people around the precinct, but offering insights into opportunities for tourism around the place. So there may be some work we can do with those volunteers just to make sure that they are across the latest and greatest of Melbourne. We also work with Visit Victoria to make sure that the state is well promoted on the way through. We have the arrivals walk between the primary customs line and baggage claim is sort of decked out in Visit Victoria imagery. So I think there's probably some work to do with us and Visit Victoria to make sure that imagery remains current and is showing off the best of the state. We've also got an option to show off Victoria in all its glory. So we do work with them on that, and we certainly partner with them on the big major events as well, just to make sure that when people arrive for things like the Australian Open or the Grand Prix or even the NFL in a couple of months' time, people know they've arrived in Melbourne, that we are a major events hub, and they feel that from the moment their feet touch the ground here.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. You do that very well with the Australian Open, and then the upcoming NFL event will be the arrival's fantastic. Andrew, the Melbourne Airport is a partner of our upcoming Victorian Tourism Conference in Latrobe in August, and you'll be presenting on.
So in August, we will have our master plan, our 20-year master plan, out on public exhibition. It goes out on public exhibition on August 10. So the VTIC conference will be one of the first opportunities really for us to talk about it publicly, which is really exciting. And the master plan is it's a statutory requirement under the Airports Act, but what it does is it lays out our plans for infrastructure and service development for the next 20 years, and then also the safeguarding we do for beyond that. So we would really encourage everybody in the industry to have a look at the document, and what we'd really like is submissions as well. So that'll all be available on our website, and the submissions process is really easy. But obviously we want the industry's views and feedback on Melbourne Airport, what we're looking at doing, what we're doing well, what we need to do better. We are the gateway to the state. We are the country's largest 24-hour gateway, so we're a great asset to Melbourne and Victoria. But we, obviously need to make sure that we're doing what the industry needs us to do. So the master plan process is a really good opportunity for the industry to have a say on that. And we'd encourage as many of you as possible to make your views known as part of that process. I think it's a 60-day consultate or 60 business day consultation period, so it runs from early August through until November.
No, that's great, Andrew. And as I said, you're presenting at the conference, so that's wonderful. But we'll also be sharing the opportunity with all to our members across all our channels, and it's a great opportunity for industry to have a say. So do jump on and take part. So that's the 10th of August. So excellent. And there's one more question, but I think, Michael, I asked you this question. I'm just wondering if you have insights or breakdown on passenger numbers travelling for tourism versus business. We did cover that, didn't we?
We asked a question about the visitor statistics. Yes, we do. Again, we probably rely again on the International Visitor Survey in terms of the composition and breakdown. We also have some additional data that we do get from Border Force, and that does, when you answer that question, when you're coming into the country, we get that data, but we only get it for passengers arriving into the country. We don't get that data for people leaving. So we do have some further breakdowns, and we can provide that to you as well, Michelle, based on some of those insights we see.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think it's coming to an end, so thank you for that great presentation. I know our members really value this insight, so we'll look at having these presentations every 6 months or so industries kept up with those latest figures. After this, any questions anyone has, please send them through, or if there's other information you'd like us to share with industry, we can put the request through to Melbourne Airport. So thank you, Michael, Andrew, and the little assistant. It was a great presentation, and thanks for everything you're doing for industry.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
So, everyone, as I mentioned, you'll be receiving the recording in the next few days or early next week. Do send the information through to any questions through to us, and we'll direct them to Andrew and Michael. Just a reminder on our upcoming events. The big one, the 2026 Victorian Tourism Conference and Top Tourism Town Celebration, is on at Latrobe City, Gippsland, from the 11th to the 13th of August. This will be fabulous. We've blended recently. Last year we started with the conference and Top Tourism Town, and that just brought so many people together in regional Victoria, and it's a great celebration. Have a look at the program. It is really interesting. So if you're available, please take the time to jump on and register and attend. We also on the Wednesday afternoon have a leader symposium for the first time. So there's lots to offer everyone. So jump on and have a look at the program, and look forward to seeing you then. In Wednesday, the 19th of August, we're going to regional Victoria for Spotlight on a Member. So look out for that announcement very, very soon. And we're having a VTIC election luncheon. So save the date on Wednesday, the 16th of September. Tickets will go on sale most probably early next week. To secure one, do jump on quickly, as we believe this will be extremely popular, and there's only so many seats in the room. Thank you, everyone, and I'd really like to take this opportunity to thank all our partners. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to bring sessions like this to you today, to keep you informed, supported, and connected. Thank you, and thank you to Melbourne Airport. Bye.